Hey guys, today I'm going to be going over books I recently read. Most of these books I read in October, but I did read a couple at the beginning of this month, and I'm going to just squeeze them together because I read them in such close proximity and they are fresh in my mind. The first book I want to talk about is a popular one, and I am pleased to say that I read in October A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This is a signed collector's edition with a little maroon ribbon. I don't actually remember where I got this or if I was trying to get this edition when I did, but I'm really happy with it, especially since on the inner pages it has illustrations, and I actually refer to these a lot when helping myself imagine the characters. On the back we have some more. So yeah, just a little bit about the book itself physically. Now to get into what the book is actually about. This book follows a boy named Kel. I say boy because he is very young and he is able to travel between worlds. More specifically, Londons is where he goes, but each of these Londons is in a larger world, and the only thing these worlds seem to have in common is that they have a London. Each of these worlds also has a different amount of magic that is accessible to them. There is White London, Black London, Grey London, and Red London. Kel is an ambassador of sorts that goes between these different Londons, and he is also a smuggler. So while smuggling rare magical artifacts from one London to another, he accidentally smuggles something that he is definitely not supposed to be smuggling and ends up in a larger scheme where one London is trying to possibly take over another. Along the way, he also runs into Lila Bard, who is a thief and wants to be pirate. I found her absolutely delightful, and the two end up mixed into this quest, and while I didn't see the plot going where it did, I enjoyed it along the way. The positive thoughts I have on this book is that it was fast-paced, funny, and clever. I really liked pretty much all of the banter between Kel and Lila. Each of their jokes hit, all of their snarky banter came across the page. There was never really a dry moment between them, and I definitely found myself laughing out loud. I also just really enjoyed Lila's character, so when it came to connecting to the characters, I didn't have any problem with doing that here. The only reason why this ended up not being a 5-star but more of like a 4.5 is by the ending, I wasn't itching to start the next one, and I don't know entirely why. I definitely do plan on reading the next book. I just, when I ended it, was on to the next book, and I haven't actually thought about it since, so I made sure not to give it a 5-star just because I'm trying to reserve those for those books with an extra spark, those books I just have to continue on, or that I just feel 100% satisfied and it stays on my mind. Overall, a fantastic read, and I'm really glad that I picked it up. I, in the past, have not liked Victoria or V.E. Schwab's work, but I was basing that off of her young adult duology, which I believe is This Savage Song and This Dark Duet, but I found this book really enjoyable, and I'm glad that I picked it up. Thank you guys for urging me to do so. Next up is Spin the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim. You might have noticed that Darker Shade of Magic and Spin the Dawn are with me physically when I had already said all of the books I was packing into my suitcase in a video I will have linked up above. But these two books I ended up just taking with me because I did really enjoy them. I found a little bit of room in my backpack. I'm getting off track here, but I have to say, like, I wasn't planning on bringing any more books, but Spin the Dawn is what really pushed me to just make extra space. I can say for certain now I am an Elizabeth Lim fan. As far as what Spin the Dawn is about, this follows a girl named Maya, and she is growing up in a small port village. She has really grand ambitions of becoming a well-known and renowned tailor. She even dreams of making the emperor's clothes in the future. And when her brothers are sent off to war, her family falls on hard times, and Maya has to set her dreams aside in order to take care of her family. Along comes a competition in which only boys may enter, as only boys may be masters of any craft, not just being a tailor, but any master has to be a male. So Maya goes and enters this competition as her brother, and while doing this competition for the emperor, she meets a wizard, and the plot kind of spirals in a whole new direction. I have to say, this book was so pure and sweet. It's really what draws me now to Elizabeth Lim. I could almost see how it could be mistaken for middle grade until you realize their age and their maturity that comes along with it, but she just has such an innocent, soft writing style. Elizabeth Lim is a great book for transitioning from middle grade into young adult, and just the overall feel of this book was pure and sweet. The other thing I really liked was the Project Runway like competition. Like, I'm telling you, I was expecting Tim Gunn to walk in and just rip apart some of these Taylor's pieces of work. If you like Project Runway, I really think you will like this book. It's part Project Runway, part epic quest. There is a mission, there's a larger purpose that happens in this book. The competition just kind of gets you started, and then, like I said, the plot just goes in such a different direction. Like, I'm talking adventure, action, world building. The third act is all so good. I can't believe so much was packed into this book, to be perfectly honest, and I really cannot wait to start the next one. I also want the physical copy, so yeah, I took this with me so that I could have the two of them eventually side by side. And like I said, while this does read a little bit like a middle grade in the overall like innocence of where the character is coming from, the character does have a certain naivete to them. There's definitely some romance scenes that I am so invested in. It just also has a fantastic plot alongside it. I'm guessing you have guessed what this rating was, but I did end up giving Spin the Dawn a 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. No regrets there. I happily carried this book on my back for a 24-hour travel to Japan. It was worth having it by my side. On to audiobooks, because those were the only physical books I took with me. I don't even own these books physically, so I didn't leave them behind. They never existed. But my third book I'm going to talk about is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This is a very popular book. Most people already know what it's about, but in case you don't, or if you want a refresher, The Cruel Prince follows our main character, Jude, who is a twin, and after her parents are brutally murdered, she is taken from the human world and into the Fae world, I believe known as Fairy. She is actually raised by her captor and the person who murdered her parents. There's a lot of dynamics that come along with that, as well as being a human in the Fae world. She has a half sister who is also half Fae. All of those family dynamics were a really essential and interesting part of this book, as well as it taking on a larger plot point where Jude wants to have power and she wants to feel in control. She tries her best to rise in the ranks while others are trying to bring her down. I would say one of the things I really liked about this were the Fae characters. A lot of the time Fae are described as mischievous or feisty, but you don't really see it. These Fae are actually really mean, like mischievous mean, where the stakes are very different and mortality is put to the test quite often. I found that to be a really cool part of the story and kept me interested, as well as the second half of this book having a really great twist. I didn't see where all of the characters were going to go, and by the end I definitely felt intrigued and invested. I will say, leading up to the second half of this book, I wasn't really interested. After the very beginning and all the way through the middle, it felt kind of like we were just wasting time. I didn't feel like a lot was really important, and I know that that's like a heavy statement to say because like a lot happened between the middle and the end, but I felt like we really could have tightened up some of the moments or the character developments. I found a lot of what was happening predictable, though there were some really good twists at the end, and essentially I ended up not caring too much or feeling connected too much with any of the characters. I was invested more in the plot than the characters, and that's unusual for me, so I ended up going on Goodreads and giving it a 3.5 stars. I almost gave it a 3, but I really was kind of turned a little by the ending, so I do have high hopes for the next book, and I hope that now that I have a grasp of those characters, I can connect to them moving forward. Next up, I have Bridge Kingdom by Danielle Jensen, and this is a fantasy romance book, heavy on the romance. This story follows our main character, Lara, and she has been raised from the age of 5 to become an assassin alongside her sisters so that she can be used as a peace treaty to another kingdom. There is a kingdom that is in control of trade because of a bridge that connects them. Lara is sent there not to actually wed and marry him, but to kill him. The political intrigue in this is actually quite important, but I found that I did have a hard time understanding or visualizing the bridge and its importance until much further into the book. So I think if you go in understanding that this has a lot of political intrigue, that the bridge of the Bridge Kingdom is important, then you'll be starting off on the right foot. But as far as starting off on the right foot, the first scene, first chapter is really good. I immediately was like, what am I reading? That kind of opening always is going to get me. So that was definitely a big positive for me. The other being that this was just really fun and lighthearted. I found myself connected and invested in the love interest, and I think that in a fantasy romance that is pivotal, that is important because it's such a large amount of the book. But I did enjoy every single time the characters were on page together. I had a lot of fun. I could tell that it was not meant to be taken incredibly seriously, and when serious moments did happen, it still had the comfort of being low stakes book overall, even though their stakes were high. I'm not trying to minimize their feelings, but I was in the middle of moving to a foreign country, so I needed a book like this, and it came through for me 100%. This was a fun, lighthearted, very spicy fantasy romance, and I enjoyed it all the way through. The one thing I would say is I don't know if there's a map in the physical copy, but I didn't have access to a map on the Audible version, and I think a map would have really helped me. But I also don't think you should need a map. I love maps, but I don't love to need maps. This was both a positive and a negative. It was predictable. I didn't feel surprised really at any moment besides the initial beginning, and even that was kind of sorted out. So this is a no surprises, predictable, lovely fantasy romance book that I think is perfect as a comfort read, as long as you're okay with the content warnings that I'll have listed down below for every book on this list. I think I gave it 4 stars, and I was a happy camper. Happy camper. Okay. Finally, and firstly, because I actually read this first on the plane, but I read Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. This is, I believe, a novella. It's kind of hard to tell because it's an audiobook, but I feel like it was only about 5 hours long, and I'm putting it as a novella. If you know it's something different, let me know. Every Heart a Doorway is part of a larger Wayward Children series, and I have been wanting to pick these books up for such a long time. The premise of these stories, or at least the first story, since that is all I have read so far, is that there is a academy, a school, kind of set in the middle of the woods, and it is for children who have come back from magical worlds. It's a portal fantasy, but you have characters from fantasy worlds where once they've come back from that world, they have to readjust to having been in a fantasy world. The overall idea of this book was really great. I thought it felt really original, and I really liked the dark take that it had. There is a murder mystery, there is a lot of melancholy thoughts and ideas about like what happens if you go into these magical worlds and what happens when you come back. There's also a lot of depth as far as what kind of magical world would be a person's perfect world, as far as like what I would find to be the perfect world might be different from another person. So where you have high whimsy worlds and then you have high science worlds, each of these doorways leads to a different type of world, and I thought it was really well done and very easily understood. This book actually is really easy to understand. I got the premise, I got the vibe and the atmosphere very quickly. I knew what I was walking into, and I was enjoying it. I enjoyed how gruesome this story is. It's very dark. Again, content warnings will be listed down below. Make sure that this works for you, but I was surprised by a couple moments. Even though I knew it was dark, it got darker. I was screaming, not on the airplane, but I was screaming internally. It really just packed a lot of information and a lot of character development and storytelling into a very small book, like teeny tiny. I definitely want to be able to read the next one because I want to see how all of these stories combine together, because I feel like we've really got a good opening, and I think that this world is going to expand in a really beautiful way. The thing that made me give it a 4-star instead of a 5, despite me wanting to start the next book, I can't say I felt like that same spark that I talked about in Spin the Dawn, where I just, it's like that feeling you feel after you read a book where it just sticks with you and it just gives you, I don't know, like butterflies. I didn't feel butterflies from this book. It was very much so once I finished it, I was like, well, that was great, cool. I eventually want to read that next one, and then I was on to the next book. The other weird, not complaint I have, but thing that like kept on resurfacing in the back of my mind is one of the characters really reminded me of one of the characters in Middle Game, which is another book by Seanan McGuire. I mean, obviously it was written by the same author. I felt like they were almost archetypes of each other, where I kept on just inputting the character from Middle Game into one of these characters, and I really wanted to like that character, but I felt like I already kind of knew them, like they had been transported. Now maybe that'll come up later. Maybe this is a world that the two books intersect in some way, shape, or form, but as far as what I could understand. It just kind of seemed like Shauna McGuire really likes this type of character. I just didn't feel like there was enough differences between the middle game character and this character. Overall, really enjoyed all of the books I have read. I am also currently reading 2 more books. You guys voted on my last TBR in October, The Witch Haven by Sasha Payton Smith. I'm happy to say I've started that one. I'm at about 10, maybe 15%. I think that it starts off really great and I'm really enjoying it, so good on you guys for voting. I will be talking about The Witch Haven in my next recent reads. And finally, I'm still reading Amberlow by Laura Elena Donnelly. I started this book actually a while ago and I was reading so many books, it just went slower, but I am still reading it. I do not any longer have the physical copy, but thanks to the kindness of a friend for letting me hop onto their Audible where they have the book, I am now about 60% of the way through and should be finishing Amberlow very soon. Sorry, I had meant to actually finish that one this month. I really thought it was going to be part of this recent reads, but I fell behind. If you watched my TBR, I had a couple comments bring up the fact that I probably wasn't gonna get to all like 8 or 9 of the books on that list, and that is true. The books on my TBR list, besides the ones I have either named or are accessible audibly, are either in a box to be shipped by season. I have a video up there where I put my different books into seasonal boxes to be sent to me, and I put the books that were left in the piles that I thought that were best suited to them, so you will eventually see them again, or I donated them and they no longer belong to me. So yeah, more on that at a different point. For now, I'm really enjoying the books I'm reading. I've really enjoyed the books I've read so far. I would love to know what your favorite book was of October. Have you read any of the books on this list, and do you agree or disagree with my thoughts on them? Like this video if you'd like more, and regardless if you do or not, I hope you're enjoying the sun or more stars wherever you are, and until next time, bye! Hello and welcome. I'm Jade of Jaded Reader, and today I'm going to be going over... Oh no, I'm not Jade of Jaded Reader. Dang, that is automatic. Like, I didn't even breathe and think as I said it. Okay, we're going with hey guys, because I can't do anything else. Nothing else sounds natural. Hello and welcome.